In a 1,000-person organization, the Pareto Principle says 200 people in that 1,000-person organization are doing 80% of the work. 200 to 80%. You think like, that makes sense. That's, sure, that makes sense. But zoom in on those 200. Of those 200, you have 40 people doing 80% of that work. Zoom in on those 40. Of those 40, 8 people do 80% of that work. Of those 8, 1.6 do 80% of that work. That means that in a 1,000-person organization, one person is doing 40% of the work. 1.6. Which is insane.
When I first met you, you said, one of my best superpowers is not scaling, is, leveraging international talent for my companies. And you had the number one Google agency in the world.
That's a fact, by the way. I made this shit up in the beginning, but I was the number one ranked, and we were the largest dedicated Google agency at the time of my sale with 200 clients on $100 million in ad spend under management.
But you did it with how much international talent on the staff?
I had almost 100 employees, and 6 of them were in the United States.
6 folks.
Yeah. So, and they were legacy people. I didn't even need the 6. God bless them. I love you all. Bro, the funniest part about that is I built the best Google Ads agency in the world. I've never run a Google Ads campaign myself end to end in my life. I wouldn't know how to.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I don't want to know how to. That's the thing. Entrepreneurship's not fulfillment, right? I built the top real estate lead generation campaign before I knew how to invest in real estate. I own an agency for Montessori schools. I'm not Montessori trained. You don't need to know how to do this shit. You need to find. It's who, not how.
Yes.
To go back to Dan Sullivan.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, because for the longest time, especially in the real estate space, and you gave me a total mindset shift on this when I first met you a couple of years ago. Because, someone in Canada is international talent. Don't be stuck just on the Philippines. Don't be stuck on, well, everybody in friggin' India has a thick ass accent. Yeah. In many cases, this is very true. And that can cause a lot of people here to have some sort of trepidation when speaking to them on the phone, right? So I think what you've done and have now taught me is open my mind across the cultural nuances. However, let's talk about Pareto talent and what you're doing in Latin America.
So the Pareto distribution is the most important economic principle in existence.
Not period. Economic, life principle.
Well, yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, if you don't understand the Pareto principle, there's so much about your life that's just going to be harder. The Pareto principle says that 20% of the inputs yield 80% of the outputs. And it's true across every level of analysis. So 20% of the cows yield 80% of the milk, and 20% of the criminals commit 80% of the crimes. It's insane when you dig into it. And it's not actually 80-20. That's the other thing that's interesting. All it means is outweighted inputs and outputs. Sometimes it's 10-90. Sometimes it's 199. Like it's unbelievably offset. 20% of the employees do 80% of the work, and that's fractal. Here's what that means. Imagine a 1,000-person organization, okay? Still a small business, but a nice-sized small business. In a 1,000-person organization, the Pareto Principle says 200 people in that 1,000-person organization are doing 80% of the work. 200 to 80%. You think like, that makes sense. That's, sure, that makes sense. But zoom in on those 200. Of those 200, you have 40 people doing 80% of that work.
Absolutely.
Zoom in on those 40. Of those 40, 8 people do 80% of that work. Of those 8, 1.6 do 80% of that work. That means that in a 1,000-person organization, one person is doing 40% of the work. Yep. 1.6. Which is insane. And it's exactly true. When I sold my agency, I had almost 100 employees. One guy, John Moran, who you know, on the faculty now Driven, one guy was managing 40% of my revenue. Smartest guy in the world. And here's what's insane. Here's what blows my mind. The rest of the business world tries to flatten the hierarchical distribution that is the Pareto Principle, because they do this. Their business analysts, Goldman Sachs, Ivy League douchebags come in and they look at this Excel spreadsheet and they see existential crises. Why is this one person responsible for so much output? And then they say, diversify the risk. It's a keyman insurance. But the problem is when you diversify the Pareto distribution, you create by intention average. You want all employees to be average. So if the Pareto distribution is a hierarchy where your best employees travel to the top of the hierarchy, they flatten the hierarchy. Sunit, it's insane.
It's insane, but
it's so insane. Accurate.
Yeah,
and you can index towards the higher distribution. So at Pareto Talent, we find train and place the best EAs in the world. And the other thing too that's really interesting is there's nothing more expensive than a cheap employee.
Oh,
so you can go find EAs at $2 an hour, and God bless you and best of luck. We find, train and place the best EAs in the world, and we pay people more than they'd ever make domestically, and they get to work from home on a flexible schedule, and we give them meaningful work. We don't place for I want 500 cold calls a day. Best of luck to you. God bless. I know there's a place for that.
However, there are places that do that as well.
100%.
We're very focused. You're very focused in Pareto, which I think is what it takes to bring such a great product, like what Perry said earlier, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So that's the Pareto. And now, interestingly, we're out of EAs right now. I have a waiting list that's not insignificant. And so I'm not even selling my agency per se. You can come join my waiting list. I'd love to place for you. You'd have to be patient. However, what I want to do, my mission in life, is I would love to see more opportunities for people in emerging nations.
Sure.
And the thing about it, dude, is
it's because we're kids of immigrants, bro.
Bro, right? It's like, hey, I could have been Slumdog Millionaire. You know what I mean? Like it was, yeah. We won the geographic lottery.
Yep.
Yeah. So when you look at it's interesting because all my entrepreneurial friends, they will outsource, but they'll only outsource grunt work. All the knowledge work they feel like has to happen here. And in my mind, I'm like, in what world are there not outstandingly brilliant people in Asia, Eastern Europe, North Africa, Latin America?
Yeah.
So don't stop outsourcing just the bullshit. My first EA became my director of automations. My second EA became my director of social. My third EA became my CTO, managed my entire exit, and is now one of my best friends.
Yep.